Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the official debut episode of Sports and Wrestling Experience. I am your humble host, Cody Davis, and we are live here at the SWX headquarters here in beautiful southern Louisiana. And I'd just like to thank anyone and everyone that has been following all the social media platforms. And for those of you that are listening to this show as we speak, the topic today will be the fantasy matchup. We'll get to fantasies later on in one of my debut segments, a segment that we're going to be doing here going forward. But the fantasy matchup we're talking about today is the fantasy NBA Finals. That is the 2000-2001 Los Angeles Lakers, led by the late Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, versus the 1995-1996 Chicago Bulls, led by your Royal Airness, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. And on this show, Sports and Wrestling Experience, please follow the Instagram and Twitter accounts at the SWX Podcast. That is at SWX Podcast. The YouTube channel, simply Sports and Wrestling Experience. That is Experience with an X. Be a part of the experience. Join the experience. Be a part of the SWX Nation. Hey, hop on the bandwagon. I got plenty of room. I'm driving the bus. We're going the speed limit. We're abiding all the rules. And for now, we're wearing masks due to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic that we are currently in. And if I can give any advice to anybody on this show, that's just be nice to everybody. It costs $0.00. I've never had to pay a dime just to be kind to somebody, open the door for whether it's a man or a woman, smile at somebody, tell them hello, how are you? It is about 2 a.m. here on a Thursday morning here in Louisiana, and you get on the social media stuff, on the CNNs, the Twitter, everything that's trending right now is stabbing. And unfortunately, there is some protesting going on in Minneapolis, Minnesota. People are looting all over the place. People are getting stabbed. People completely just rioting and just losing their minds out in Los Angeles. Out on like the main freeways, you got people doing silent protesting, which is leading to policemen out there, people getting run over, and just there's a lot of bad going on. And if we can just spread the power of positivity to each and every person that comes across us in this life or in general, this long story short, let's just be nice to everyone, please. Like I said, my name is Cody Davis from the Baton Rouge, Louisiana area. 32 years old. Hey, let's get this podcast going. Let the fun begin. Sports and Wrestling Experience. I'd like to give a big shout out to Bandit Radio. That is the podcast group that I have joined up with. I'd like to thank the guys over at One Team, One Podcast. You can follow them at One Team, One Pod. They are there's a couple of us that are local Baton Rouge guys that are playing in the Baton Rouge Takeover on the in the podcast world. The One Team, One Podcast, they have about 11 or 12 shows out. They debuted in March. They'll be covering LSU, baseball, basketball, football, you name it. Bunch of good guys. I really like them a lot. Also the Let It Ride podcast, at Let It Ride Pod. On Twitter, the Out the Box podcast is simply on Twitter at Out the Box Pod. And the Nick Diaz podcast, you can follow that at the Nick Diaz, Dias. And also the main, like I said, part of this group, Bandit Radio. I'm very thankful to be a part of the Bandit Radio family here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Please follow Bandit Radio at Bandit Radio 3, BANDIT Radio 3. All right, let's get right to it. The fantasy matchup, the 2001 Lakers versus the 1996 Chicago Bulls. Here are your starting lineups for the Chicago Bulls. The man in the middle, number 13 from New Mexico, Luke Longley. At guard from Miami University, number 9, Ron Harper. At forward from Southeast Oklahoma State University, number 91, the Worm, Dennis Rodman. At guard from Central Arkansas, number 33, Scottie Pippen. From North Carolina, at guard, 6'6", number 23, Michael Jordan. And for your Los Angeles Lakers, at guard, number 2, from University of Arkansas at Little Rock, Derek Fisher. At guard from Lower Merion High School, number 8, Kobe Bryant. At forward from North Carolina, number 17, Rick Fox. At forward from Clemson University, number 54, Horace Grant. And the man in the middle, the big man from Louisiana State University, number 34, Shaquille O'Neal. I didn't do former Chicago Bull public address announcer Tommy Edwards any favors on that one. Big shout out to Tommy Edwards and the Chicago Bulls. He's the one that was behind the entire Chicago Bulls, like the Alan Parsons project. They wanted to make it their entrances like a big thing, where they dim the lights, play a video, do all that stuff, and he had the famous voice, from North Carolina. He did all that. I guess that's my better Tommy Edwards impression. Big shout out to Tommy Edwards. Tommy, if you're listening, how are you, sir? I'm a big fan, and we all admire you and your announcing. Let's talk about the Los Angeles Lakers 2000-2001 version, led by the late Kobe Bryant. It's so unfortunate he passed away. That was it's one of those things you'll always remember where you were whenever Kobe passed away. That was a bad day. It's unfortunate that he is no longer here. And as a basketball fan, I guess if I had to be selfish for 1 second, the one thing that I guess me and all of us, honestly, we're not going to be able to, hear his Hall of Fame speech that's going to be coming up next year, because everything's being pushed back a year due to what's going on currently. And Kobe was a hell of a guy, great husband, father, and just too soon, man, too soon. The Lakers in 2001 went 56-26. They were first place in the Pacific Division, averaging 100.6 points per game and allowing 97.2 points per game. One of the worst defenses in the league back in 2001. The preseason odds for the Lakers were not very good. Well, not very good if you're a bettor. They were plus 180. So if you would have went to the MGM Grand or any of the casinos in Las Vegas, bet $100, you win 180. That's not the best odds, but hey, you would have won. Let's see, 56-26 in the regular season. They opened up the playoffs in 2001 against, I guess you could say, a arch nemesis, the Portland Trailblazers. That was when they had Damon Stoudemire, Ravina Sabonis, Rasheed Wallace, Feed Sheed, getting technicals basically every other game. I think he's got the technical record. I think he had like 41 one season, which is absolutely mind-boggling. I've been reading, I'm not finished with it yet, the Tim Donaghy book. If you do not know who Tim Donaghy is, he was the referee basically that was making the national headlines years ago for like betting on basketball. Reading his book right now, it's pretty wild. The stories that like the mafia is involved and the gambling that goes on with the referees. Like to this day, they bet on halftime shows. They'll bet on just who can call a foul first, or let's see what we if you give him a technical, I'll give you X amount. I'll bet you this there. It's nonstop. So whenever I watch basketball or sports in general, I watch it from a different set of eyes now, knowing everything that I'm reading in this book, which is a fantastic read. They got it at the thrift store for like $2, and glad I made a stop that day. But yeah, but what I was getting at is Rasheed Wallace was trying to fight Tim Donaghy one time after he got called a technical in a playoff game. He was like threatening him in the parking lot whenever Donaghy was going to his rent-a-car. Just Rasheed Wallace, crazy guy. Big fan, though. They swept the Portland Trailblazers in the first round, and the Sacramento Kings, or as Shaquille O'Neal would call them, the Sacramento Queens, uh, they gave them their best effort in the second round. Of course, Arco, the former Arco Arena, was a big time home court advantage for the Kings. This is when the Kings had the Kings were really really good in the early 2000s. For anyone listening right now, they may not remember. The Kings aren't exactly the greatest team in the NBA, but there was a point where the Kings were rocking and rolling. Should have went to the finals. I guess it was this year. I don't know if this was the year where Robert Horry made that shot. I think that was the year after, 2002. But yeah, the Kings, the referees didn't exactly help them out in the series. But they got swept in this series, but hey, they gave the Lakers everything they had. Sorry, Chris. Shout out to my friend Chris. I got a Chris Matthews out over in Atlanta, Atlanta, GA. Bad Street, Atlanta, GA. Hey, I got an idea. Dude. Shout out to Michael P.S. Hayes, WWE Hall of Famer, and one half of crap. I'm over here trying to be funny, and I cannot think of the tag team name. The Freebirds. I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah, Michael P.S. Hayes, WWE Hall of Famer from the same town as my friend Chris. Chris being a huge San Antonio Spurs fan. I gotta talk bad about your Spurs, man. They got absolutely whooped in this series. They had no chance. They lost in the Western Conference Finals to go to the 2001 NBA Finals to play your Philadelphia 76ers, led by the answer himself, Bubba Chuck Allen Iverson from Georgetown University, the first pick in the 1996 NBA Draft. The number 13 pick that year in the NBA Draft was Kobe Bryant by the Charlotte Hornets. And hours later, a pretty bad trade. It was a good trade at the time because no one knew what Kobe could do. But it was a trade. Kobe Bryant to the Lakers, and the Charlotte Hornets got Vlade Divac. Shout out to Brian Ashcraft for the Vlade Divac quote I just delivered. He's the reason why I'm doing this show right now, talking about the fantasy matchup between the Lakers and the Bulls. Brian, what's up, man? Hope you're listening. Hope you like the show. Allen Iverson, Aaron McKee, Dikembe Mutombo was basically traded to the Sixers mid-season at that time, and that whenever they at the time, I grew up a big Allen Iverson fan, and whenever they got Mutombo, I know it was not exactly that late in his career, but I mean he had a little bit left in the tank. I knew that the Sixers were going to make a big time run. Tyrone Hill, power forward, and Jermaine Jones. Also, Eric Snow, who shout out to Eric Snow for giving me the time of day back in 2017 when I was working the NBA All-Star Game in New Orleans for a company that I used to work for. I was in the Smoothie King Center. I believe it might have been the dunk contest night. I worked it the whole weekend. But Eric Snow was a really nice guy. I got to talk to him for a little while. Real grounded. I mean, no one else was talking to him. It was funny because a lot of other players, you'd see Kevin Garnett walking, he'd have security, Magic Johnson, Julius Erving, all these guys, Gary Payton. We'll talk about Gary Payton here in a little bit. But Eric Snow was just kind of walking around, hanging out, and it's like, hey, I'll chat him up. I've mentioned, being a Sixers fan in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we got a real nice guy. Raja Bell, Matt Geiger, and who can forget Todd McCulloch? Todd McCulloch got owned by Shaquille O'Neal in this series. My God. Let's see. I got a couple stats here for you in the NBA Finals. Of course, the Lakers won this Finals. They beat the Sixers in 5 games. Of course, Game 1 was led by Allen Iverson, who basically took over that game in Staples Center. I don't know if that was the second year Staples Center was open. It was hell of a performance. 48 points, of course, stepping over Tyronn Lue, making Tyronn Lue famous for the wrong reasons, and just kind of embarrassing him when he stepped over and made that three-pointer. That just solidified Allen Iverson's MVP run that season. Shaquille O'Neal in 5 games. Let's see, where are we at? Where are we at? His field goal percentage was 57%. But before I go into this, I'm getting all these numbers from basketballreference.com, basketball-reference.com, anything and everything basketball related as far as numbers. I'm a numbers guy. I grew up collecting like trading cards, baseball, basketball, football, mainly baseball cards. But I would always look at the back of the cards and look at like numbers and stats, and there was a point where I could probably feed off any average stat for so many players. That was just a huge hobby, huge pastime of mine growing up. Shaquille O'Neal, 57% field goal shots, 51% from free throw line, which, I mean, dude can't shoot a free throw to save his life. This guy, Shaquille O'Neal, averaged 33 points, 15.8 rebounds, and 3.5 blocks a game. Absolutely owned this series, and he was the MVP of the NBA Finals. Kobe Bryant was averaging almost 25 points a game, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. That's another hell of a stat line. Absolutely tremendous team in general this season. But Shaquille O'Neal, because I remember watching this, I guess I was ninth. Let's see, that year, 8th grade. It was 8th grade summer, going into 9th grade. Just amazing, and watching Shaq, being an LSU guy, it's been great. And his son, Sharif O'Neal, will be a LSU Tiger coming up here in October, November, led by the man himself, Frank William Wade, a.k.a. Will Wade, the LSU basketball head coach. Cannot wait to get into basketball season. That is my baby, my pride and joy. I am a basketball season ticket holder, and Section 213 is the place to be inside the Pete Maravich Assembly Center, and I cannot wait to be back in the PMAC here in a couple months. That is, if all this stuff is okay with all the coronavirus, everything. I hope and pray that it's all over soon. So that's the Lakers. Chicago Bulls, 1995, 1996. At the time, they had won the most games in regular season NBA history. They went 72-10. Years later, 2015. Golden State Warriors, I believe, they went 73-9. That was right before they acquired Kevin Durant from Oklahoma City. As you all remember, the Oklahoma City Thunder had them 3-2, and the Warriors ended up winning the Western Conference Finals in 7 games. And then weeks later, they acquire arguably the best player in the league for the Thunder, Kevin Durant. Now he plays for the enemy. And y'all remember how that went. That just led to more championships and losing to the Raptors. But that could be another show. Chicago Bulls averaged 105 points a game, allowed 92.9 points per game. That was one of the top defenses in the league. Their preseason odds on winning was plus 350, which means if you would have went to Las Vegas, Nevada, or online betting, bet $100, you would have won $350. They went 15-3 in the playoffs. Let's see, they opened up the NBA playoffs in the Eastern Conference playing the Miami Heat, led by Tim Hardaway, a big-time underrated player in the 90s. One of those players that kind of went, he was an all-star a few seasons, but pretty much under the radar for the most part. Because, playing in the Jordan era, getting bounced out of the playoffs, not really making many runs. Hard to be a real big superstar then, whenever you can't get past all these teams. Alonzo Mourning, this was after he had was playing with the Charlotte Hornets in the early 90s. It was Alonzo Mourning, grandmama himself, Larry Johnson, out at UNLV. Larry Johnson playing with Stacey Augmon and coached by Jerry Tarkanian. the UNLV Rebels, I believe, went undefeated, had one of the best college basketball seasons of all time. I watched a documentary on that maybe a month ago about Jerry Tarkanian coming into Vegas or UNLV and making that into like a little mini juggernaut there for a couple seasons until I guess he left. I don't remember the exact reasons why. I think there was some NCAA allegations, of course, with money and whatnot, and all good things must come to an end. But speaking of getting all things coming to an end, the Miami Heat season came to an end right here, getting swept by your Chicago Bulls. Second round, the New York Knickerbockers, New York Knicks, led by Patrick Ewing and my main man John Starks. Let's see, Charles Oakley, Anthony Mason. I mean, I love 90s basketball, the NBA on NBC. Like that theme. I would love to use that theme to open my show, but I guess copyright reasons, I'd get in a little trouble, so can't do that. The Chicago Bulls beat the New York Knicks 4-1. And the revenge series, Orlando Magic. I say that because basically this was Michael Jordan's first full season back from his baseball run with the AA, not the Arn Anderson AA, the enforcer himself. The AA Chicago White Sox affiliate, the Birmingham Barons. Yeah, Michael Jordan went to go play a little baseball after his father unfortunately passed away, and it was just something he needed to do, I guess, as a human being. So he went to go play baseball in the middle of his arguably one of the best runs in basketball history, like a huge star. I mean, it was huge news at the time. I mean, I was like 6 years old, but huge news at the time. Michael Jordan wasn't like my favorite player. I was more of a Reggie Miller kid. And everyone loved Jordan, you know? I mean, I wore 23 on my basketball team, but when I played All-Star basketball, I played, I was number 31 because I let my friend Josh Thibodeau wear number 23 because he would have whined about it if he didn't get his way. Shout out to Josh Thibodeau. But yeah, back to that. He came back to play basketball. He lost to the Magic the series before. Whenever he came back in March, February, basically to play against the Pacers. That was his first game back. It was huge. I mean, tickets were going for hundreds of dollars whenever they played the Pacers. And I'm wondering if my boy John Glick was there. John, if you're listening, thank you for being a part of the SWX Nation. John Glick at WWE's biggest fan on Twitter. He was front row at a lot of wrestling events, and I've gotten to know him over the years. Real good guy. Shout out to John Glick over in Indiana. Like I said, revenge series. They wanted to beat the Magic because the Magic went to the finals the year before. The Chicago Bulls beat the bejesus out of the Orlando Magic, swept them 4-0. And they went on to play the Seattle Supersonics in the 1996 NBA Finals. Supersonics led by the glove, Gary Payton, who had choice of words to me years ago when I was trying to get his autograph, and not the nicest guy in the world. Shout out to Gary Payton, Hall of Famer Gary Payton. I thought it was pretty funny. I was watching a video about a month or two ago. I guess it was more than that. It was a video from last year. LSU Tiger Emmett Williams, who will be a dominant player in the NBA, hopefully in 2020, I guess, not this year because I'm hoping he does not go pro. Hopefully he stays a Tiger. But he was getting some advice from Mr. Payton at this camp. And at the end of the video, he's like, "Oh, thank you so much. And what's your name again?" And Payton says, "Payton, Gary Payton." I just thought that was pretty funny because he had no clue who he was. Because Gary Payton thinks he's, Nonetheless, Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. Sean Kemp was basically one of the top. He was kind of Kevin Garnett before Kevin Garnett, if that makes any sense. But then Sean Kemp, as the years went on, kind of just wasn't as dominant. He kind of disappeared. Got really chubby and was no longer a star in the NBA. We'll cut right to the chase. This wasn't exactly the most memorable NBA Finals, but the Chicago Bulls won it in 6. They won in Chicago in front of the fans. And of course, there's the moment where Michael Jordan is in the locker room with the basketball crying because they did win on Father's Day. And of course, that was, the first time his father hadn't seen him win a championship, and Michael Jordan and his father, James, were really close, and it meant a lot that they won on Father's Day in general. What a dominant team this 95-96 Lakers Bulls were. I guess we'll just cut right to the chase. At the very beginning, I've asked a ton of people who I thought would win this series. Everyone I asked, everyone was just telling me Bulls, 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 Bulls. I have about 10 people at work told me the Chicago Bulls. Speaking of work, shout out to Drago's. Drago's, home of the Chalk-Grilled Oysters out in Baton Rouge, Metairie, New Orleans, and Jackson, Mississippi. Drago's, home of the Chalk-Grilled Oysters. Dine in or take out. Come check us out in the Baton Rouge area. We'll take good care of you. And we are wearing masks, and we are practicing social distancing, and we will gladly give you a safe dine-in experience. Drago's, home of the Chalk-Grilled Oysters. Wanted to do that advertisement. Let's see. But yeah, like I was saying, everyone was saying the Bulls, and my original thought was the Lakers. It really was. I was thinking, who's going to guard Shaq? Who's going to guard Shaq? But the more I did my research, the more I looked at it. The Bulls in 96, their point differential was about 12 points a game, dominating opponents. The Lakers, it was about like a 3.4 margin or so. And what I'm looking at right here, I'm looking at like the team itself. You got Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, Longley, Luke Longley, Tony Kukoc, Ron Harper, Steve Kerr, Bill Cartwright, like all these guys, Bill Winnington, sorry. All these players, they had a strong bench. John Sally, like they could have, they had like a pretty decent rotation. And the Lakers, you got Kobe, Shaq, Derek Fisher, Horace Grant, Rick Fox, Brian Shaw, Robert Horry. And the way I look at it, I guess I'm looking at the full bench. So you got Tyronn Lue, Brian Shaw, Ron Harper. Ron Harper was on both teams, by the way. He didn't really play much in the for the 2001 Lakers, but he was starting for the Bulls 6 years prior. Guys, just plain and simple. I was looking at the depth. I was looking at the numbers. In this fantasy matchup, the Bulls would have home court advantage. Speaking of fantasies, we're gonna do a little quick segue into a segment that I want to call the Manzo segment, which is the Adult Star of the Week. Big shout out to my boy out in Long Island on the LI, Frank Manzo. Follow Frank Manzo on Twitter at FManzo3. The Adult Star of the Week is none other than Autumn Falls. Autumn Falls is a newbie in that industry. If I could compare her to anybody, she's maybe like the Zion Williamson of that industry. A very young player has already made a huge impact in her industry. She is a definite go-getter. She can go all day and night. She is quite the performer, and she is one to look out for. Ladies and gentlemen, the first Adult Star of the Week is none other than Autumn Falls. What are we doing here? Looking at all the numbers, if I had to guess, I would say my first thing was who's guarding Shaq. Who is going to guard Shaquille O'Neal? Luke Longley? Who knows? I guess, if I'm coaching, which I'm not a coach, but I'm putting Rodman on him. And that's why I think the Bulls end up winning the series in 6. But I think the depth that the Bulls have, I think they would just basically be putting guys out there to foul Shaq. And as we know, Shaquille O'Neal isn't exactly J.J. Redick or Kevin Durant when it comes to free throw shooting. It maybe not be like a hack-a-shack like the teams have done in the past. I forgot who came up with that hack-a-shack. It might have been the Trailblazers. I mean, it was like the whole NBA, but it was kind of like the Jordan rules with the Pistons. There was one team that kind of came up with it. I cannot think about it right now, but nonetheless, putting Shaq on the free throw line, Michael Jordan and his tenacity, mentality, Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, and plus Phil Jackson's coaching both teams, by the way. Ron Harper, Phil Jackson, both on the same team. Pretty cool. I think for sure that the away team, the Lakers, would have won Game 1, with Shaq physically just dominating that first game. The Bulls would have did some a lot of changing, and you cannot deny Michael Jordan and Pippen during this era. Steve Kerr, all these guys on this team. I got the Chicago Bulls in 6, and shout out to all the Chicago Bulls fans listening. Grew up a big fan of you guys, and still kind of follow the Bulls in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, as far as the debate, the one number that I did look at, the playoff point differential for this for both teams in 2001 and 96 for both teams was 14.166 to the dot. It's crazy how like both teams, like I said, the point differential, which is an important number, especially like in the gambling world and whatnot. But 14.16. I found that pretty shocking when I saw that. I was like, wow, pretty cool. Again, thank you, Brian Ashcraft, for giving me this topic for my first show. Brian, love you, buddy. And big shout out to my mother. A lot of you will be listening to this show afterwards. But tomorrow, May 29th, is my mom's birthday. She will be 56 years old. Christy Davis, a Struma High alum, out in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Same high school that Heisman Trophy winner Billy Cannon went to out in Baton Rouge. Huge shout out to my beautiful mother, Christy. I love you so much, and I don't know where I'd be without you. So thank you for loving me, being a great mother, and being a part of the sports and wrestling experience. Basically, because I'm making you be a part of the experience. But yeah, love you, Mom. And that's really all the debate we got. I just wanted to provide y'all some numbers, give y'all my opinion. Like I said, we'll be talking a lot about sports. We'll be talking a lot about wrestling. Someone had said, like, why don't you just narrow it down? Like a certain show, like a certain topic. And there's going to be some times where I want to talk about basketball. Sometimes we might talk baseball or football or SEC football, basketball, the entire country, sports, NBA, NFL, MLB, maybe some hockey, some golf, or maybe some like NASCAR or something. I don't know, whatever the audience wants. And in wrestling, it's sports and wrestling experience. Talk about the WWE, talk about All Elite Wrestling, talk about Ring of Honor, New Japan, Impact. And I do want to develop a local partnership with Wildcat Sports Entertainment out in New Orleans, the phenomenal local independent wrestling promotion led by Luke Hawks. I go going to a lot of those shows. They have a big show coming up at the Shamrock Bar in late June. We'll find out soon if they're going to do the show due to the pandemic that is continuing to do what it is doing to the world. Hopefully that show goes on because I miss I miss doing things in public, as anyone that's listening does right now. But that's going to do it for the debate on the 2001 Lakers and the 1996 Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls will hoist the Larry O'Brien Trophy in Chicago due to their home court advantage. They will win this game in 6 games. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please message me at the SWX Podcast on Twitter. Please follow, like I said, Instagram, Twitter at SWX Podcast, the YouTube page, which I'm going to figure out how to get this onto YouTube. Just search Sports and Wrestling Experience. That is Experience with an X. Join the experience. Be a part of the experience. One person at a time. We will take over the South and take over the world as we know it. Also, the Facebook page, Sports and Wrestling Experience. Just check it out. Give it a like. Give it a thumbs up. Let's build this thing, man. One person at a time. We're gonna have some fun with this. Like I said, that's gonna do it for today's show, the official debut show. I hope everyone enjoyed it. We're gonna get better and better as the shows go on. Thank you for being a part of the first show that I've ever done, first main show that I've ever done, and I thank anyone and everyone that ever listens to this show and follows this on Spotify and also SoundCloud. And I'll do what I can to get this on Apple Podcast and whatnot. This is only the beginning. I'm sitting in here looking at my laptop with a microphone in my hand and from my living room, just doing something that I love, and that's entertaining the masses and just talking a little sports. For myself, Cody Davis, your host of Sports and Wrestling Experience, that's going to do it. And as always, FJH, everybody. Everyone have a good day and a good night.